I used to feel envious because whenever the older actors didn't have a scene, they got to relax in the schoolroom while the kids were cooped up in a little room doing homework. Following her transformation from a fiery Roseanne character to a reasonable voice, Darlene Connor surprised daytime TV with the invention of the discourse. Many in the audience remarked on how sharp, consistent, and authoritative she was. The world didn't know about the person behind that serene, soothing speech. They were carrying battles. There was no fairy tale ending to Sarah Gilbert's climb to stardom. A sense of duty washed over me. Her behavior was not to be characterized by that of a child. There was high expectation that she would likewise achieve greatness, continuing the legacy of a family name that was already famous in Hollywood. People liked her because she became the oddball, as the actress who perpetually gave the impression that she belonged nowhere. Away from the spotlight, Sarah battled for equilibrium, self-discovery, and tranquility, something even more elusive than praise. She is talented and accomplished, but that is not why her story is heartbreaking. Each was abundant in her possession. Despite her success, she frequently felt unnoticed. A shadow of sadness has followed Sarah everywhere she has gone. For a long time, she hid her identity, and even as a toddler, people made fun of her for being similar to her famous brothers. Typical Hollywood stardom and scandal stories don't exist in this story. A tale of brilliance eclipsed by isolation. This is Sarah Gilbert's sorrow. Achievements hampered by physical discomfort, and those of a woman who dedicated the most of her life to performing, both on screen and off. Hollywood was not Sarah Gilbert's accidental landing spot. There she was born. She came from a long line of television nobility. Her grandfather, Harry Crane, was an influential figure during the golden age of humor as a co-creator of The Honeymooners. Barbara Crane was an iconic figure in the entertainment industry, and her daughter inherited her savvy as a talent manager and producer. When Sarah reached the age where she could grasp a toy, her half-brother Melissa and Jonathan Gilbert, who are siblings, were already well known as beloved Little House on the Prairie child actors. In their culture, fame had no place. It was run by relatives. Stacks of fan mail, gifts from studio executives, and quick-dial numbers for famous people were routine events for the Gilberts. Nonetheless, Sarah found it unnatural. Neither was she as enchanted. On the contrary, she often felt like an outsider, observing others while they enjoyed the limelight. Upon initially establishing child labor in a Kool-Aid commercial when they were just 5 years old, the tone for her childhood would be set by that dwarfish figure. Sarah, in contrast to her peers, was busy stepping onto sets, memorizing lines, and pursuing a career path she hadn't quite planned while they were playing tag and learning their ABCs. University only had a role in the being alone. She openly expressed her discomfort with classes, saying that she couldn't sit quietly like other kids her age. The characters and plots that swirled about in her head were more captivating than anything on the chalkboard. At first glance, it might have seemed perfect, a head start in a loving Hollywood home, the chance to play in worlds most kids could only imagine. But Sarah had something heavier on her back. Everyone kept comparing her to her siblings and putting pressure on her to live up to standards she had never requested. Although acting gave her a way out, it never truly comforted her. She was uninterested in receiving praise or recognition. She longed for a feeling of belonging, which was exceedingly rare in the Gilbert home. A new chapter began in Sarah Gilbert's life. Considerably by the time he was 13, her breakthrough role as Darlene Connor on Roseanne cemented her status as a television legend. Weekly, millions of Americans tuned in to hear Darlene rip at each other with biting one-liners and scathing barbs. This middle child is the rebel whose wits kept them one step ahead of their elders. Sarah seemed fearless, assured, and entirely at home in her part. However, a teenager fighting for emotional stability lay beneath that front. Most kids struggle with questions of privacy and self-identity, but Sarah was compelled to do it because of shining brightly under the fluorescent lights of prime-time television. She went through her whole teenage years in front of an audience of millions, including every uncomfortable phase, moment of self-doubt, and awkward moment. She went on to say that going through puberty in the spotlight was tough for her, and that whereas other kids could play about with self-esteem in the seclusion of their bedrooms, she had to smile for the cameras as she discovered who she was. The equilibrium was unreachable, despite her best efforts to stick to a schedule. After deciding to attend Yale University as both a dedicated student and a professional performer, Sarah made an effort to lead two lives simultaneously. During her weeks, she went coast-to-coast journeys along the seaside. She would board the Red Jet to New York to go to Yale classes on Thursdays after her trips to Los Angeles to film Roseanne. She would spend her Sundays on trains, mentally and physically drained and torn between two worlds that she never felt at home in. Having friends was fleeting, as her classmates either ogled her or paid her no mind at all, neither popular enough nor private enough to belong. The boundaries become hazy even within Roseanne. The transformation of Darlene from a carefree tomboy to a jaded artsy girl mirrors Sarah's own personal journey of maturation. Conversely, Darlene was cherished for her unique qualities and brought up by a supportive family, while Sarah often experienced feelings of isolation. There was a surprising twist to the praise she got for being genuine. The company that lauded her honesty also punished her for being creative. But still, her tenacity had no bounds. As an exceptionally young woman, she achieved the remarkable achievement of penning an episode of Roseanne at the tender age of 17. She then received nominations and awards which further proved her talent. However, fatigue and a growing sense of bewilderment were beneath every compliment. Tell me who she was. Darlene, the person everyone expected Sarah to be, or Sarah, the young woman trying to find her own way. Since there was more to portraying Darlene than simply the long hours and frequent travel, that question would trouble her for years. I had a slowly losing her individuality. Audiences loved Sarah Gilbert as the sarcastic Darlene, but behind the scenes, she was carrying a secret that grew heavier each time. Johnny Gleeky, who played David, and she seemed to have great chemistry on set. They had a prearranged romance. Throughout the performance, and art briefly became life. Many found their on-screen young romance to be as endearing as it was when they dated in real life, but Sarah couldn't make sense of the truth. Johnny was very important to her, but the spark she had hoped never came to fruition. Instead of butterflies, she felt a hollow ache and the unsettling realization that her emotions weren't matching expectations. It was taboo for young actors to talk about their differences in the early 90s. The film industry in Hollywood was notoriously harsh to those brave enough to venture outside its narrow borders. Unspoken was Sarah's plan. She put up a brave front during interviews, smiling and acting out her lines in an effort to hide her true feelings. She was afraid her job would be in jeopardy if she revealed her true self. Prior to its commencement, when will casting directors no longer contact? Will onlookers automatically judge her based on her sexual orientation? She was haunted by such questions. As a result, she kept performing, both professionally and in her personal life. She remained silent for a long time. She continued to project the appearance of a calm, collected person, even as her career took off and her years passed. But being still isn't easy. It breaks trust, creates obstacles, and inflicts pain that no one can alleviate. An award or acclaim might help. In 2010, Sarah co-created and co-hosted the noon show The Talk, which focused on genuine conversations, genuine connections, and honesty. After decades of keeping it hidden, she finally came clean in 2013 during an emotional episode. Her sexual orientation was gay. That admission was sensitive, extremely brave, and susceptible to harm. She admitted that she had known for a while, but she was terrified of the consequences for her career and employment. The response was prompt and enthusiastic. The other hosts embraced her. Her candor was praised by viewers. While this broke her out of her shell, it also revealed just how severely her years of isolation had affected her. Just because you've been hiding from the world for a long time doesn't mean the wounds will heal just by coming out into the light. The healing process is just beginning. Although Sarah Gilbert was able to live more honestly after coming out, she was nonetheless vulnerable to heartbreak. She was in a committed relationship with TV producer Allison Adler for almost 10 years. After having 2 children and keeping a home together, they seemed to have finally found stability. Separate from the mayhem of Hollywood, private family life. Looking at it from the outside, it seemed unmovable. On the other hand, cracks were opening up behind the doors. Sarah, who usually keeps to herself, became visibly distraught during the conversation in 2011 after the relationship had ended. Tearfully, she disclosed, without naming people, the difficulty of witnessing the abrupt disintegration of something you had hoped would last. A romance was more than just over. It was the end of a falsehood she had convinced herself about love. 2 years down the road, Sarah found herself entangled in an intense romance with musician and performer Linda Perry. Her career as a hitmaker-producer, and her band Four Non-Blondes, brought her the greatest fame. Their love story seemed like it belonged in a film. In the middle of a park picnic and t-shirts, Perry made a massive musical proposal, accompanied by a marching band, spelling out the words, "Will you marry me?" In Sarah's opinion, that was reasonable. They tied the knot in Malibu in 2014. According to their friends, they were like two artists who understood and appreciated each other's quirks and depths. At first glance, Sarah seemed to have finally met her match. This narrative also came to a close. Sarah claimed irreconcilable differences and sought for legal separation in 2019. After the fact, Perry was gracious about the split, saying it was simply another chapter in the wild ride that is life. A seemingly endless issue came to a calm end without any public quarrel or animosity. Sarah, though, got yet another scar as a result. She seemed to become more distant every time she let her guard down and let her emotions show. Isolation is the inevitable end to every love that started with optimism. Sarah started to distance herself from public conversations regarding her private life after experiencing numerous heartbreaks. Everything that had previously been public knowledge, proposals, weddings, and breakups, was now contained within her home. Maybe it dawned on her when, as a love story is shared with the world, the weight of loss becomes unbearable. Struggling with popularity, motherhood, and personal issues, Sarah Gilbert continued to mold television from the inside out. By the year 2019, she had already made a shocking declaration. She announced her departure from the chat program she co-founded. There was no big dispute or violent altercation. Sarah chose to convey it in a calm and forthright manner instead. Everything in her life was unbalanced. She had been neglecting her children's needs. She neglected her own health. Most importantly, she confessed that she was tired of being the center of attention. As she informed the audience, her voice remaining low, "I'm okay with letting that piece of it go," but firm. Nevertheless, she had already been taken unawares by an additional storm. It wasn't defeat, but self-preservation. After a hiatus of 20 years, Roseanne was brought back to life in 2018, with Sarah guiding the reunion of the Connor family. Reviving interest brought back a lot of interest and generated a lot of ratings. It appeared for a moment that Sarah's perseverance had gone full circle. However, all of that changed with the release of a single tweet. A racist comment was made against a former Obama staffer by Sarah's mentor and long-term partner, Roseanne Barr, Julia Jarrett. A rapid and violent uprising ensued. What had been an incredible return was cut short when ABC canceled the show almost immediately. Sarah, the redesign's fiercest advocate, was crushed. In a brief statement, she expressed her disgust with Barr's comments and criticized them as disgusting disappointment. Unfortunately, Roseanne chose not to take responsibility. On the contrary, she unleashed a torrent of accusations on Sarah, telling her she betrayed me and even blamed her for ruining my life. The comments hit Sarah hard because Sarah had once held her in high esteem. Regardless of the fact that it was described by many as the right interesting thing, she was cast as the antagonist in Roseanne's downfall. In keeping with her character, Sarah chose not to defend herself. Neither her anguish nor the abuses she had received were made public. As the tempest subsided, she stayed silent. Nevertheless, what another cut was caused by the incident. Sarah was forced to cope with the fallout when a relationship she had nurtured and a project she had attempted to revive collapsed due to the acts of another. Sarah's career seemed to be heading in the right direction, but she was mentally and emotionally drained from all the effort she had put in. Thanks to her notoriety, she had succeeded. But she would never get back the tranquility, the friendships, and the years of solitude that she had lost because of it. After the storms of fame and heartbreak passed, Sarah Gilbert started to slowly fade away from the spotlight. She remained somewhat involved with television. She continued to be involved in artistic endeavors and served as an executive producer for the Connors. Her strategy, however, shifted. It seemed like there was a strong need to be always on display, to keep expressing oneself, fade away. Rather, she embraced her long-held need for solitude. During her interviews, Sarah became increasingly wary. She shied away from talking about her past relationships, steered the conversation away from tabloid topics, and kept the questions focused on her career. Sightings in public spaces grew rare. In the past, she had analyzed her whole life, including her relationships, breakups, and difficulties. But at this point, she had blocked access to what really mattered. Her main focus shifted to her children, and she fiercely protected her family's existence. As someone who had endured constant comparisons, criticisms, and scrutiny since childhood, this retreat was far from ending. A boundary it was. After much deliberation, Sarah had settled on the parts of her identity that were visible to the public, and the parts that were private. There are no explosive scandals or dramas in her story. But that's precisely why it's so interesting. Tragedies do not always have a dramatic appearance, as Sarah Gilbert's narrative shows. Sometimes it seems like years of hidden sadness, silent exhaustion, and the bravery needed to lastly safeguard one's own interests. She is strong in her stillness. Resilience is on display at her refuge. The journey that Sarah Gilbert takes is far from the typical scandal-ridden Hollywood tragedy. This is a story that is less chaotic and more terrifying. Among all the ladies who brought joy to the world while keeping their hurts hidden, her life has been an ongoing juggling act between being seen and keeping disguised, weighing her down from childhood fame, struggling to hide her true nature, experiencing love and loss, and shattered friendships. The tragic part of her story is it's also quite relatable to people. As a reminder that people might be secretly fragile on the inside, even if they project an image of strength, wit, and success outside. Being able to keep going even when the going gets tough has always been Sarah's strength. Have you any ideas? What struck a chord with you the most in Sarah Gilbert's story? Was it her battle with notoriety, her relationships, or being silent? If you enjoyed this article and would like to read more like it, please subscribe and comment below.